Everybody, welcome back. Our last video was an introduction to Excel's formulas and functions. And this is going to be our last video in Excel, is a continuation of that, and it's going to be a step more complex, if you will. So the first one, we talked about the more basic functions, things like the sum function and the average function. I want to take it a step further and talk about a few of the functions that are a little bit more complex. But once you get these things, they can be very, very helpful. And I'm specifically talking about some of the logical functions, namely the if functions. The if functions, this is something that comes out of deductive logic. It's essentially Excel saying, if a certain condition is met, then this is going to be true. If it is not met, then it's going to be false. So there's really two options. And what that means in your spreadsheets and in your tables is you really have two options, and the formula is going to basically look for whether or not a certain condition is being met in a certain cell, and if so, it's going to return a result for you. If it's not being met, it will return a different result for you. Well, how does that look in the real world? Let's go back to this student grades table that we created before. Let's say that I want to put together some sort of pass-fail for my students. So I have the overall grades here, but let's say that we're grading them all completely on a pass-fail basis. I want to find out how I can actually do that. Well, let me see. Failing is going to be less than 64% or less than 65%, and passing is going to be 65 or higher. I can use an if function to determine that very, very quickly. I'm going to come up here to the Formulas tab and go to Logical. And actually, it's right there, third one from the top. This is the if function. It tells you what it really does. It checks whether a condition is met and returns one value if true and another value if false. Well, let's see how that actually looks. When I click on this, it's going to open up another window. And this is the nice thing, because Excel really does walk you through the whole process. You can write these if you'd like, but at first, when you're still getting your feet wet, if you will, this is a great way to kind of learn these things incrementally or step by step. So the first thing is the logical test. Well, I want to determine what is passing or failing. Well, in the case of Gwen Adamson here, this is row 3. Her overall grade's an 81. So if I click on 81, that's I3, then I have to basically tell Excel what that really means. So I3, I'm going to say, is greater than, you remember this from math class, it's greater than 64. This is true over there, so there's nothing wrong with what I just wrote. Now, if that is true, what do I want returned? Well, I want the word pass returned. Now, if it's false, I want the word fail. So let's hit OK and see what happens. Lo and behold, 81 is passing. So what we can also do, and you know this very well by now, is we can use the fill handle, click and drag, and that's actually bringing down the formula itself, remember. So pass, 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 pass. 64 is failing. 58 is failing. Hey, it worked. So this is a very, very basic if function. It's really, really helpful. Now, let's take it a step further and let's talk about something called a count if. Now, let's say I had to keep track of how many of my students were passing and how many of my students were failing. Well, I'm going to look at all these grades here, and this is going to be my range, and I want to determine how many. If they're passing, we're going to put them here. If they're failing, they're going to go there. So the count if is one that does it very easily. It's under logical again. Now, I don't see it here. So let's say I didn't know where it was. I can go to the Insert Function tab, and I can just type it in right there if I wanted. And there it is, count if. Counts the number of cells within a range that meet the given condition. So I'm going to click OK. And again, it's going to give me this extra box to help me kind of ease me through this whole thing. So what's the range in this case? Well, D3 is my range, the beginning of it. Then it's going to be a colon, and it's going to be H11. That's my range. So what are the criteria? Well, if this is the passing I want to determine, passing is going to be greater than 64. Now let's hit OK and see what happens. The number 37 comes up. It added all of them together immediately. So for this one, I'm just going to write it because now I feel a little more comfortable with these things now, right? So count if, and I'm going to get my range in there, D3, and that's going to end at H11. And I'm going to put a comma there. And now in quotation marks, I'm going to put less than 65. And then I'm going to close there. And when I hit enter, 8. And I know that there are actually 45, so that is correct. Very, very easy to do. You see count if right there. Let me show you another example of that. Let's say that I have to come up with how many office hours I have in a given week. Free, busy, I have them all mapped out there. Pretty nice. Free hours, busy hours. Well, what I want to do again is I want to count that. So I'm going to, remember, it's the equal sign. It tells Excel that you're writing a formula of some sort. I'm going to type in count if, and I'm going to put in parentheses there. And what I want to do is put my range in. So this is going to be B4 colon I9. And what is it that I'm actually looking for? Well, in this case, I want the word free. And what happens when I hit enter? It counts the number of words itself. Busy hours, same thing. Count if. I'm going to put my start parenthesis there. I'm going to go B4 colon, and then it's going to be I9. I'm going to put a comma. And then again, what's the criteria? What is it that I'm actually looking for? The word busy. 28. You can see how with a lot of information, with really big spreadsheets where you have to keep track of data, count data, manipulate data in certain ways, but pretty basic ways, you know, this way or that way, either or, true, false, that kind of thing. The if functions are very, very valuable. So what I suggest you do is take a look, play with them a little bit. You can also insert function and then go down here to the help function there, and that will actually bring you to the Microsoft tutorial webpage, and that can be extremely helpful. But take some time, play with them, see how they work for you. I hope they do. Thanks, folks.